I took my late wife's camera to be developed, expecting memories. The photographer, a family friend, stopped me and said, "Don't show these photos to anyone else." Curious, I asked why. He handed me a sealed envelope with trembling hands. What I saw in those final pictures revealed a terrifying secret that would change everything. Please subscribe and share where you're watching from in the comments below. For 3 months, that camera sat untouched. I had no idea it would change my life forever. 3 months after burying my wife, I finally found the courage to touch her camera. My name is Stephen Mills, and at 67, I never thought I'd be learning to live alone on this Montana ranch. Natalie and I raised 2 kids here, Bryce, who runs a struggling trucking business in town, and Adrienne, who married into money when she wed Roderick Stone 6 years ago. We built a good life on these 1,200 acres, watching our cattle graze and our grandchildren grow. Then April came and everything changed. The old Nikon sat on our kitchen counter like a monument to grief. Natalie had carried that thing everywhere during her last year, documenting our ranch with the passion of someone seeing it for the first time. She'd been the most careful driver I knew, but they said her brakes failed on Highway 12. Just one of those things that happen to older vehicles, the sheriff told me. I'd been avoiding Howard's camera shop in town, but this morning felt different. Maybe it was the autumn light slanting through our window, the same golden hour she'd chased religiously. I wrapped the camera in an old flannel shirt and drove 20 minutes into Millfield. Howard Sinclair had been developing our family photos since before we were married. His shop sat between Murphy's Hardware and the old diner, now just another empty storefront in a dying town. "Stephen," Howard looked up with careful sympathy. "Been wondering when you'd come by." I placed the camera on his counter. "Her last roll. I'm ready." Howard handled the Nikon with reverence. She loved this old girl, always asking about f-stops and shutter speeds. Said photography taught her to really see things. The familiar tightness gripped my throat. "How long?" "Give me an hour." I walked Millfield's empty streets, counting for lease signs like tombstones. When I returned, Howard was waiting with a manila envelope, his expression troubled. "Most of these are beautiful, Stephen. Real professional quality, the ranch cattle, that old oak by your gate." He paused, glancing toward his window. "But there's something you need to see. Come to the back." He led me past displays to his development room. Photos hung from a clothesline like evidence. The first shots showed typical ranch scenes. Then they changed. "These last few are different," Howard said quietly. "Looked like she was hiding, taking pictures from behind trees." The images showed our eastern pasture from concealed angles. Men in white protective suits working near Willow Creek. Equipment I didn't recognize. Then the final photograph hit me like a punch. Roderick Stone. My son-in-law stood beside our creek in pre-dawn darkness. Next to him, a stranger helped dump contents from large metal containers directly into the water. Even in the grainy light, their actions were unmistakable, deliberate, secretive, criminal. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. Howard stepped closer. "Stephen, these photos. If the wrong people know she took them, you could be in serious danger. Hide them somewhere safe." My hands trembled as I reached for the pictures. "What were they dumping?" "Nothing legal." "And Stephen," Howard gripped my shoulder, "be very careful who you trust. If they killed her for these photos," the words hung between us like a death sentence. Natalie's brake failure suddenly made terrible sense. "You think they murdered my wife?" Howard's silence was answer enough. I drove home with the envelope burning against the passenger seat. How long had Natalie been watching them? What had she discovered? And why hadn't she told me she was in danger? Our ranch looked different as I pulled into the driveway, not like the sanctuary we'd built, but like a crime scene. The creek where we'd taught our grandchildren to fish, now contaminated by whatever my own son-in-law had been dumping. The question now was, what was I going to do about it? That same afternoon, Adrienne and Roderick showed up unannounced. I'd barely finished hiding the photographs when their BMW crunched up the gravel drive. Through the kitchen window, I watched my daughter emerge, her designer heels completely wrong for ranch life. Roderick straightened his expensive suit, the kind of man who wore ties to visit family. They'd been coming around more since the funeral, always with careful concern that felt rehearsed. "Dad, you look tired." Adrienne kissed my cheek, her perfume sharp against the smell of hay. "This house feels so empty." "I'm managing fine." Roderick settled into my recliner without invitation. "Stephen, we've been worried. Managing 1,200 acres alone at your age, that's tremendous responsibility. Been doing it for 40 years. "With Natalie's help," Adrienne said softly. "But now I do it alone." Roderick leaned forward, his smile practiced. Actually, that's why we're here. I've been speaking with business associates about your situation. There's a development company very interested in this property. It's not for sale. Of course not. Adrian rushed in. We're just exploring options for your security. Roderick pulled out a leather folder. $3 million, Stephen. Cash offer, quick closing. You could buy a nice place in town, one of those condos near the golf course. I stared at the papers. $3 million for land my grandfather had cleared by hand. This ranch has been in our family 80 years. Times change. You're 67, Stephen. How much longer can you handle the physical demands? Something in his tone made my skin crawl. The same cold calculation from that photograph. You know, Stephen, he continued, standing to loom over me, ranch work is dangerous at your age. Heavy machinery, rough terrain, unpredictable animals. A man could get seriously hurt if he's not careful. One moment of inattention, and he let the words hang there. And are you threatening me, Roderick? His laugh was too quick. Threatening? I'm trying to help family. I'm concerned about your safety. Accidents happen on ranches every day. Adrian touched his arm. Honey, maybe we should... Your father's smart, Adrian. He understands what I'm saying. Don't you, Stephen? I understood perfectly. The same people who'd killed my wife were telling me I might be next. If I need time to think. Of course, but don't take too long. Roderick gathered his papers. Opportunities like this don't last forever. And frankly, at your age, time isn't something you have in abundance. They left with promises to check on me soon. I watched their taillights disappear, hands shaking with rage. Locking up for the night, I found a business card that had slipped from Roderick's folder, wedged between couch cushions. The company name meant nothing, Clearwater Environmental Solutions, but the address was local, and the logo showed a drop of water with a mountain behind it. The same logo I'd glimpsed on equipment in Natalie's photographs. Everything was connected, and I was running out of time to figure out how. The next morning, I searched through Natalie's veterinary office for the first time. I'd avoided this room since April, unable to face her meticulously organized files and the faint scent of antiseptic that still lingered. But yesterday's discoveries had changed everything. If my wife had been investigating something dangerous enough to get her killed, the answers might be hidden among her work. Her desk sat exactly as she'd left it. Appointment calendar open to April 18th, the day she died. Coffee mug with a ring stain, reading glasses folded beside her computer. I started with the filing cabinet, working through patient records for our neighbor's livestock. At first, everything seemed normal. Vaccination schedules, pregnancy checks, routine treatments. Then I noticed a pattern in her handwriting. Small question marks penciled beside certain entries, all from the past 6 months, all involving animals from farms along Willow Creek. Unusual symptoms she'd written beside one entry. Cattle showing signs of toxicity, no obvious cause. Another file contained photographs of sick animals, cows with patchy hair loss, horses with respiratory distress, a neighbor's dog that had died after drinking from the creek. My hands trembled as I pulled out a manila folder marked Personal Research. Inside were soil samples in small glass vials, each labeled with GPS coordinates. Water test results from 3 different labs. The numbers meant nothing to me, but Natalie had highlighted them in red ink and written dangerous levels across the top. She'd been building a case, documenting evidence, preparing for something. I moved to her bookshelf, running my fingers along veterinary textbooks and journals. Behind her diploma from Colorado State, something crinkled, a small envelope sealed and tucked into the frame. Inside was a brass key and a handwritten note in her careful script. Stephen, if something happens to me, this key opens box 247 at First National Denver. Trust Howard. Don't trust anyone else. The ranch is in danger. I love you. N. The paper slipped from my fingers as the full weight hit me. Natalie hadn't just stumbled onto something suspicious. She'd been systematically investigating it, collecting evidence, preparing for the possibility that her discovery might cost her life. She'd known she was in danger. I sank into her desk chair, surrounded by the careful documentation of what might have been her final weeks. How long had she been afraid? Why hadn't she told me? Had she tried to warn me in ways I'd been too blind to see? The key felt warm in my palm, solid and real. Whatever she'd hidden in Denver was important enough to risk her life documenting. Important enough that someone had killed her to keep it secret. I thought about Roderick's visit yesterday, his calculated threats, about ranch accidents, about the business card connecting him to the equipment in those photographs, about my daughter unknowingly married to the man who'd murdered her mother. Standing in Natalie's office holding her final message, I understood that I had two choices. I could pretend ignorance, sell the ranch, and spend my remaining years wondering what really happened to my wife. Or I could follow the trail she'd left me no matter where it led. The decision wasn't difficult. Natalie had died trying to protect our land and our community. The least I could do was finish what she'd started. I pocketed the key and headed for my truck. Denver was 3 hours away, and I had a safety deposit box to open. That same afternoon, Bryce and Vanessa arrived with good news. I was loading supplies into my truck for the Denver trip when my son's pickup rumbled up the drive. Bryce climbed out wearing his usual worried expression, the same look he'd carried since his trucking business started hemorrhaging money. Behind him, Vanessa clutched a leather briefcase like salvation. "Dad, perfect timing. We need to talk about your future." They followed me into the kitchen where Vanessa spread papers across the breakfast table with practiced efficiency. "Stephen, I've been analyzing the local market," she said in her smooth realtor voice. "Property values have plateaued, but there's significant development interest. I'm not selling." Bryce leaned forward. "Dad, hear us out. $3 million cash, quick closing, no contingencies. You could buy that place in town, maybe get an RV for traveling." "I never wanted any such thing." Vanessa pulled out glossy brochures. "These retirement communities offer everything: golf, medical facilities, social activities. No more worrying about cattle or equipment." I studied my son's face, seeing desperation beneath his enthusiasm. "How much do you owe, Bryce?" The question hit like a slap. His smile faltered. "What? Your business. How deep in the hole are you?" Vanessa's hand found his arm. "Stephen, this isn't about money. Like hell it isn't. Who's been talking to you? Who put this in your heads?" Bryce's shoulders sagged. "Dad, please. Just listen. Vanessa and I have been discussing your situation. Living alone at your age with all these responsibilities. My situation is fine." "No, it's not." Vanessa's voice turned sharp. "You're isolated, grieving, making poor decisions. Yesterday you acted paranoid in town, asking Howard strange questions." My blood chilled. Someone had been watching me. "Dad," Bryce said quietly, "Vanessa and I already signed papers. We think you need help making big decisions. It's not about money. It's about your safety." The betrayal hit like a physical blow. "What papers?" Vanessa opened her briefcase with clinical precision. "A petition for competency evaluation. We're concerned about your mental state since Natalie's death. The isolation conspiracy theories, inability to make rational decisions." I stared at legal documents bearing my son's signature. My own child declaring me mentally unfit. "The evaluation is next week," Bryce said, unable to meet my eyes. 3 doctors will assess your cognitive function, decision-making capacity, ability to manage your affairs. And if they find me incompetent, the court appoints a guardian to handle your finances and property," Vanessa explained with satisfaction. "For your protection." I looked at my son, the boy I'd taught to drive, to fish, to work with his hands, the man whose business I'd helped finance when banks wouldn't. "They got to you, didn't they? Promise to pay your debts if you helped them get the ranch." "Dad, no one got to me. I'm trying to help." "You're trying to steal my land for whoever's paying your bills?" Bryce's face flushed. "That's exactly the paranoid thinking that proves you need help. There's no conspiracy, Dad. Just a family trying to care for a stubborn old man who can't accept reality." They gathered their papers and headed for the door. "The evaluation is next week," Bryce called back. "Please don't make this harder than it has to be, Dad." I watched them drive away, understanding that I was truly alone now. My daughter married to a killer. My son bought by the same people who'd murdered his mother. Denver couldn't wait. Whatever Natalie had hidden might be my only chance to save everything. The following night, I drove to Denver, avoiding main highways. I'd waited until midnight to leave, taking back roads through the mountains where surveillance would be harder. The 3-hour drive gave me too much time to think about Bryce's betrayal, about the competency evaluation hanging over my head. By dawn, I'd reached the city limits. First National Bank sat in downtown's financial district, a granite monument to old money. I waited until they opened, watching commuters hurry past with coffee and smartphones, living normal lives untouched by murder and conspiracy. The safety deposit box clerk was young with kind eyes who didn't ask questions when I presented Natalie's key and death certificate. "Take all the time you need, Mr. Mills," she said, leading me to a private room. Box 247 was larger than expected metal and surprisingly heavy. My hands shook as I lifted the lid, revealing 3 folders and a small digital recorder. The first folder contained surveillance photographs. Not Natalie's usual artistic shots, but telephoto images taken from concealed positions. Dozens of them documenting systematic dumping operations at multiple locations along Willow Creek and 3 other county waterways. Men in hazmat suits, corporate trucks, barrels being emptied into streams feeding the town's water supply. The dates spanned 8 months, an ongoing operation, not a one-time incident. The second folder held chemical analysis reports from independent labs, soil samples showing dangerous toxin levels, water contamination studies painting a picture of environmental terrorism. Maps marked with red X's showed poison spreading through our groundwater system. Within 2 years, it would reach Millfield's wells. Within 5, the entire valley. The third folder contained corporate filings, bank records, shipping manifests, a paper trail connecting the dumping to shell companies and offshore accounts. At the center, Cornelius Stone, Roderick's father. But the digital recorder destroyed what remained of my composure. I pressed play with trembling fingers. Natalie's voice filled the room, alive, determined, afraid. It's October 15th. I followed them tonight to the old Morrison place. Stephen, what I've discovered, they're not just poisoning our land. They're running a criminal enterprise taking millions from companies nationwide to illegally dispose of toxic waste. Our creek, our soil, our neighbors' water, all contaminated. Her voice broke. I've documented everything. Chemical signatures match industrial solvents, heavy metals, carcinogens causing birth defects and cancer. They're killing our community for profit. A pause then. If something happens to me, Stephen, they killed me to keep this secret. Don't let them get away with it. Don't let them poison our grandchildren's future. The recording ended, leaving me with the weight of her sacrifice. My wife had been murdered for trying to save our community from environmental terrorism. I gathered the evidence carefully. This wasn't just about our ranch anymore. It was about justice for Natalie, protection for our neighbors, stopping a conspiracy, threatening thousands of lives. Leaving the bank, sunlight seemed too bright, the city too normal. People walked past, carrying on ordinary conversations, while I carried proof of mass poisoning. Halfway to my truck, I spotted it, a white pickup, with Montana plates parked across the street. The same vehicle from Natalie's photos. The driver wore a baseball cap pulled low, but I felt his eyes tracking me. They'd followed me to Denver. They knew exactly what I'd found. And now I had to figure out how to use it before they silenced me permanently. The next morning, I called Diana Crawford from a payphone at a Denver diner. I'd spent the night in a cheap motel, afraid to go home with that surveillance truck tailing me. Diana Crawford's name had come up when I'd Googled Environmental Investigative Reporters Colorado. Her byline appeared on corporate cover-ups, illegal dumping politicians taking energy company bribes. Denver Post Crawford speaking. Ms. Crawford, my name is Stephen Mills. I have information about a massive toxic waste operation in Montana. People have been murdered to keep it quiet. A pause. Sir, I get a lot of calls. My wife documented everything before they killed her. I have photographs, chemical analyses, corporate records, and her voice recording naming those responsible. Where are you? An hour later, I sat across from Diana in a Denver Post conference room. She was maybe 40, with sharp eyes and the focused intensity of someone who'd built a career exposing lies. I spread Natalie's evidence across the table like cards that could win or lose everything. Diana examined each photograph methodically, comparing them to chemical reports. These toxin levels, this isn't just illegal dumping. This is environmental terrorism. My wife traced it to a network of companies. Shell Corporation's offshore accounts run by Cornelius Stone. Diana's fingers flew across her laptop. Stone, here we go. Cornelius Stone, multiple LLCs in Delaware, Wyoming, Nevada. Classic money laundering setup. She looked up. Stephen, we're talking about a multi-state criminal enterprise. I played Natalie's recording. Diana listened without interruption, taking notes, her expression darkening with each revelation. Your wife was incredibly brave and thorough. This is Pulitzer-level documentation. Can you publish it? I need verification first. Corporate Filings Lab results cross-reference the chemical signatures. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling my EPA contact and someone at the FBI who specializes in environmental crimes. While Diana made calls, I watched Denver traffic, thinking about normal people living normal lives while poison spread through Montana groundwater. Good news, Diana said, hanging up. The EPA has been investigating similar operations in 3 states. Your wife's evidence fills gaps in their case. The FBI is very interested. What happens now? We expose them tomorrow night. I'll come with you to confront them. I need their confession on record. Too dangerous. If they killed Natalie, that's why we'll have backup. She dialed again. Detective Thornfield Diana Crawford. I need tactical support for an environmental terrorism investigation. She covered the phone. Thornfield's been wanting to nail corporate criminals for years. He'll position officers around your ranch close enough to intervene. My hands shook. You want me to call them? Tell them you're ready to negotiate. Make them think they've won, that you're giving up. They'll come to gloat, maybe get careless. Diana handed me her phone. Call now. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. I dialed Roderick's number, heart hammering. Stephen, I was hoping you'd call. Have you reconsidered our offer? Maybe. Can we talk tonight's not good, but tomorrow evening? Perfect. My father and I will drive up tomorrow at 8 p.m. We have a final offer you can't refuse. The line went dead. Diana was already typing. They took the bait, she said with satisfaction. Tomorrow night, we end this. I stared at her laptop screen where she'd begun drafting the story that would either save my community or get us both killed. What if they don't confess? Diana's smile was sharp as a blade. Stephen, I've been doing this 15 years. Men like Cornelius Stone can't resist explaining how clever they are, especially when they think they're about to win. The next evening at exactly 8 p.m., Cornelius Stone's black sedan pulled into my driveway. I watched from the kitchen window as two figures emerged: Roderick in his usual expensive suit, and an older man who moved with the calculated confidence of someone accustomed to getting his way. Cornelius Stone looked exactly like what he was: old money wrapped in tailored wool and quiet menace. Diana had positioned herself in the back hallway an hour ago, wireless recording equipment connected to Detective Thornfield's surveillance van parked a quarter-mile down the road. The plan was simple. Get them talking, capture their confession, let the cavalry arrive. My hands were surprisingly steady as I opened the front door. Cornelius. I shook his hand, noting the soft palm of a man who'd never done physical labor. Good of you to drive all this way. Stephen. His smile was practiced paternal. I've been looking forward to meeting you properly. Roderick's told me so much about the family. They settled into my living room like they owned it. Cornelius took the recliner Natalie's chair, while Roderick perched on the couch's edge, nervous energy radiating from every muscle. I understand you've reconsidered our offer, Cornelius said, pulling out a leather portfolio. Smart man, sometimes it takes time to see reason. This ranch has been in my family 80 years. And what a legacy. But times change, Stephen. You're alone now, getting older. These 1,200 acres are too much for any one man to handle. I poured coffee with hands that barely trembled. The environmental impact concerns me. What exactly does your company do? Cornelius's smile never wavered. We solve problems, Stephen. Industrial waste, chemical disposal, regulatory headaches. We make them disappear. Like you made my wife's concerns disappear. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Roderick shifted uncomfortably, but Cornelius remained perfectly still. Your wife was a lovely woman. Tragic accident, those brake failures, especially in older vehicles. Funny thing about brakes, they don't usually fail on their own. Cornelius leaned forward, his mask slipping slightly. Stephen, I'm going to be direct. Your wife was too curious for her own good. She started asking questions, taking pictures, collecting samples. That kind of behavior can be problematic. Problematic enough to kill her. Accidents happen, especially to people who don't understand the bigger picture. Cornelius stood, using his height to loom over me. We're offering you $3 million to walk away. Take it and live comfortably for the rest of your natural life. Refuse, and I'll have the same accident as Natalie. Roderick finally spoke, his voice tight with stress. Our associate is very skilled at solving problems permanently. Brake lines, gas leaks, hunting accidents. Montana's a dangerous place for stubborn old men. Is that a threat? Cornelius laughed cold and sharp. It's reality. We've invested too much in this operation to let one grieving widower destroy it. Your wife learned that lesson. You can learn it the easy way, or the hard way. Actually, Diana said, stepping out of the hallway with her recording equipment, thousands of people just heard that confession. The color drained from Cornelius's face. What the hell? Diana Crawford, Denver Post. Thank you for that detailed admission of murder and environmental terrorism. Roderick lunged toward her, but the sound of sirens was already growing louder. Car doors slammed outside. Boots on the porch steps. You set us up. Roderick spun toward me, his face twisted with rage. You lying old bastard. He launched himself across the room just as Detective Thornfield kicked in my front door, 3 officers behind him with weapons drawn. Montana State Police, nobody move. Cornelius raised his hand slowly, his arrogant mask finally cracking. This is entrapment. Illegal recording. My lawyers will be very busy, Diana said, still recording, because this conversation is going live on the Denver Post website in about 10 minutes. I watched them cuff the men who'd killed my wife, feeling something I hadn't experienced since April Hope. Diana's expose hit the Denver Post website at 6 a.m. the next morning. I was feeding cattle when my phone started ringing. Reporters, neighbors, distant relatives who'd seen the story spreading across social media like wildfire. The headline read, Montana Rancher Exposes Environmental Murder Conspiracy, with Diana's byline and a photo of our ranch at sunrise. By noon, the story had been picked up by CNN, Fox News, and the major networks. Diana's article laid out everything Natalie's systematic documentation, the illegal dumping operation, the corporate shell game, and the recorded confession that had sealed Cornelius and Roderick's fate. I was watching the coverage on my kitchen television when Detective Thornfield called. Stephen, you need to see this. Turn to Channel 7. The screen showed FBI agents in tactical gear raiding a warehouse outside Billings. According to the reporter, federal agents were executing simultaneous search warrants across 4 states, targeting properties linked to Stone's criminal network. Based on evidence provided by Montana rancher Stephen Mills, the anchor explained federal investigators have uncovered what they're calling the largest illegal toxic waste disposal operation in U.S. history. The phone rang again. This time it was Diana. Stephen, it's exploding. The EPA is calling it environmental terrorism. The Justice Department is talking RICO charges. And we just got word they arrested Curtis Fleming this morning. Curtis Fleming, the man from Natalie's photographs, the one who'd helped Roderick dump poison into our creek. He's already talking, Diana continued. Apparently he doesn't want to face federal murder charges. His lawyer called my editor an hour ago. Fleming's willing to testify about everything. The brake line sabotaged the dumping schedule, the whole operation. I sank into my kitchen chair, overwhelmed. What's he saying? That Cornelius Stone ordered your wife's murder when she got too close to exposing them. That Roderick cut her brake lines on Highway 12, knowing she'd be driving that route to her veterinary conference in Missoula. That they've been poisoning Montana groundwater for 2 years, taking millions from companies nationwide to illegally dispose of industrial waste. The television showed Cornelius and Roderick being led from the courthouse. In shackles, their expensive suits replaced by orange jumpsuits. Cornelius kept his head high, still radiating arrogance, even in handcuffs. Roderick looked broken, defeated, the weight of his crimes finally crushing his shoulders. Federal prosecutors are seeking life sentences, the reporter announced. The environmental damage is estimated in the hundreds of millions of dollars, affecting water supplies for over 50,000 residents across 4 states. I thought about our neighbors, the families who'd been drinking poisoned water without knowing it, the livestock that had died, the cancer rates that would probably spike in the coming years. All of it for Cornelius Stone's profit margins. My phone buzzed with a text from Bryce. Dad, I saw the news. I'm so sorry. Can we talk? Then another from Adrian. I had no idea. Please forgive me. I stared at the messages, feeling a complex mix of vindication and sadness. My children had betrayed me, but they'd been manipulated by master criminals. The competency evaluation was already canceled hard to declare someone mentally unstable when they'd just exposed a multi-state conspiracy. The television switched to a live shot from the EPA cleanup site at Willow Creek. Workers in hazmat suits were installing filtration systems, testing soil samples, beginning the long process of environmental restoration. The cleanup is expected to take years and cost taxpayers millions, the reporter said. But thanks to one man's determination to find the truth about his wife's death, one of the largest environmental crimes in American history has been stopped. I walked outside to check on the cattle breathing clean Montana air and watching the sun set over land that was finally safe again. Natalie's photographs had started this journey, but it was her courage and the evidence she died protecting that had brought these criminals to justice. Tomorrow I'd have to figure out how to rebuild relationships with my children, but tonight, for the first time since April, I could sleep, knowing that my wife's killers would spend the rest of their lives in federal prison. Justice had been served. Natalie could rest in peace. 6 months later, spring came early to the ranch. I stood in our kitchen doorway watching morning sunlight stream across pastures where new grass pushed through soil that was finally clean. The EPA had finished their work in February, declaring our water safe and land restored. The scars were healing both in the earth and in our family. Adrian's car was already in the driveway she'd been coming by every morning since moving back to help with ranch work. The divorce from Roderick had been finalized in January, just before his sentencing. 25 years in federal prison. His father got life without parole, dying in his orange jumpsuit, while his criminal empire crumbled. "Morning, Dad." Adrienne appeared in the kitchen, hands already dirty from feeding horses. She'd traded designer clothes for work boots and flannel shirts, rediscovering the ranch girl she'd been before money complicated her life. "Coffee's fresh," I said, pouring 2 cups. "Bryce coming by today. Around noon, he's bringing the kids." She accepted the mug gratefully. Emma's excited about the memorial garden. She wants to help plant wildflowers. The memorial garden had been my winter project, a small patch near the creek, where Natalie used to photograph wildlife. I'd chosen her favorite flowers, Indian paintbrush, lupine mountain asters, simple Montana blooms that would return each spring. Bryce had lost his trucking business, but found work with a construction crew in town. Hard labor that seemed to ease the guilt he carried. We were rebuilding trust one conversation at a time, like laying foundation stones. "He's been sober 3 months," Adrian said quietly, "since the trial ended." I nodded. Addiction had been Bryce's way of handling shame, but he was fighting back to the man I'd raised. Recovery was possible for people and for land. The afternoon brought grandchildren's laughter echoing across pastures, where cattle grazed on grass that would never again be poisoned. Emma, now 7, helped me plant purple lupine while her brother chased butterflies between fence posts. "Grandpa, will Grandma Natalie see the flowers?" Emma asked, her small hands gentle with seedlings. "Every spring when they bloom," I told her. "She'll see them and remember how much we love her." As evening approached, I walked alone to the small cemetery on the hill, where 4 generations of my family rested. Natalie's headstone was simple granite, "Beloved wife, mother, truth seeker." I knelt beside her grave, placing fresh wildflowers from the memorial garden. "You didn't just save our ranch, love," I whispered. "You saved our whole community. The water's clean now. Kids can swim in Willow Creek again. And those men will never hurt another family." The wind rustled through cottonwoods, carrying the scent of clean earth and new growth. Somewhere in that sound I heard her voice reminding me that courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was doing what's right, despite the cost. Walking back toward the house, I saw lights glowing in every window. Adrian cooking dinner, Bryce helping grandchildren with homework. 3 generations gathered around the table where Natalie and I had shared 42 years of morning coffee and evening conversations. The ranch would continue. The family would heal. And in the mountains surrounding our valley, spring water flowed clean and pure again, carrying life instead of poison. Natalie had given her life to protect what mattered most. The least I could do was spend the rest of mine honoring that gift. You know, folks, at 67 years old, I've learned that God works in mysterious ways. When I lost Natalie, I thought my world had ended. But the Lord had a different plan. He used her courage and those photographs to expose the truth and save our community. This true story taught me that sometimes the strongest among us are those who fight for what's right, even when it costs them everything. Natalie showed me that real strength isn't about holding on to anger. It's about holding on to what matters: family, land, and justice. Grandpa stories like mine remind us that ordinary people can do extraordinary things when guided by faith. God gave me the wisdom to see through the lies, the courage to seek justice, and the grace to forgive my children. Without his guidance, I never would have found the strength to take on those powerful men who thought they could poison our land and murder my wife. Looking back on this true story, I realize that every trial we face is part of God's greater plan. He used my grief to uncover a conspiracy that threatened thousands of innocent lives. He turned my family's betrayal into an opportunity for redemption and healing. These grandpa stories matter because they show how the Lord works through broken people like me. When I thought I was alone, he provided allies like Howard and Diana. When I felt defeated, he gave me the evidence I needed to seek justice. True story after true story proves that with God's help, even the smallest voice can speak truth to power. Grandpa's stories teach us that it's never too late to fight for what's right. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to stand up for the truth when it seemed impossible? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who needs to hear that justice is possible. Sometimes we all need reminding that with faith and courage, even the darkest secrets can't stay hidden forever.